go back to high school, sophomore year, geography class, you all learned it, the confluence of three rivers. We're at the spot today where the Allegheny on the left meets the Monongahela, and they come together to form the Ohio. And directly in the middle, of course, our home today, the city of Pittsburgh, the historic gateway to the West. Good morning, everyone. I'm Charles Gibson. It is Friday, August 18th. And we are in Pittsburgh, and we got a good day for it.
We sure do. I'm Joan London. We are right now on the banks of the Allegheny, and behind me there, that is the skyline of the business district downtown Pittsburgh, and it doesn't really look like that smoky steel town that we all hear about, and it really isn't. It's gone from industrial Klein, completely turned itself around to a high-tech center, and it is called the most livable city in America.
And something, of course, that interests me, it is a great sports town. We are appropriately in Roberto Clemente Park. He, of course, the great star of the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 60s and early 70s. We're going to have with us this morning three members of the Pittsburgh Steelers from their glory days. They are all men who came to play in this town and decided to stay. We're going to have with us Franco Harris, Rocky Bleier, and Lynn Swan. And we will also take a look at Pittsburgh through the eyes of a man who covered this town for more than 40 years. And also with us, of course, we couldn't leave him home, is Spencer. Spence?
Well, Charlie, I am across the river from you guys atop Mount Washington, overlooking beautiful downtown Pittsburgh. And I'm next to the Duquesne Incline, which is a unique way that Pittsburghers and the hilltop communities have of getting around their fair city. I'm going to show you more of this area a little bit later, and of course I'll have some weather. Joan?
All right, Spencer, and leading the news this morning, Poland appears on the verge of getting a non-communist government, and Forrest Sawyer is in New York with that story and all the other news. Good morning, Forrest.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. It is 8 years after imposing martial law to crush the Solidarity trade union that Polish President Wojciech Jaruzelski is expected to nominate a Solidarity candidate for Prime Minister, and official word could come as early as today. Jim Hickey is covering startling political developments in Warsaw.
Polish President Jaruzelski is expected to announce his decision soon on proposals put to him by Solidarity leader Lech Wałęsa and his coalition partners, a plan to form the Eastern Bloc's first non-communist government in 40 years. Wałęsa said Jaruzelski has at least approved the concept of a non-communist prime minister. Wałęsa's name is no longer being mentioned as a candidate, but other Solidarity leaders are. Many polls this morning are talking about this man as a front-runner. Tadeusz Mazowiecki is a Solidarity member of Parliament and a close Wałęsa advisor. Jacek Kuran, another Parliament member, is also being mentioned. Bronislaw Goremek, Solidarity Parliament leader, reportedly has declined the job. The greatest challenge of a Solidarity-led government will be bringing Poland's economic mess under control. Solidarity merely had to look in the streets of Warsaw this morning to see the problem. Long lines of people waiting to buy bread, which is in very short supply. One of the big questions this morning is how will Solidarity handle Poland's economic problems? There is no guarantee that a Solidarity coalition government will be able to solve these problems any better than the communists have. Lech Wałęsa admits it is a risk, but a risk worth taking. Jim Hickey, ABC News, Warsaw.
And what about the Soviet Union's reaction to all of this? Well, so far it has been restrained. No indication Moscow will try to prevent the formation of the Soviet bloc's first non-communist government in 4 decades. And in the United States, privately, White House officials are said to be elated. However, as David Insor explains, the public position is more cautious.
From Kennebunkport, Maine, where President Bush is vacationing, his spokesman Marlon Fitzwater said while the U.S. obviously favors the remarkable changes in Poland, it is concerned about the fragility of the process. At the State Department, too, a welcome but concern about how the Soviets may react.
We welcome progress in the formation of a government which would enjoy broad popular support, but we emphasize that this continues to be a matter for the Polish people to decide.
Fortunately, the Soviets seem to agree, a spokesman saying the formation of the Polish government is the internal problem of Poland. But while there's excitement in Washington about the prospect of a government in Poland dominated by non-communists, there's also fear among some experts on Poland that any government taking power now faces almost insurmountable economic problems.
I'm not sure that they will survive it as a party, because they may, after a couple of months, they may find out that they have exactly the same problems as the communists. They will quickly lose the credibility, and then I see basically Solidarity falling apart.
U.S. officials expect a Solidarity prime minister to make renewed requests for U.S. and other Western aid, though they say there are no plans to increase the rather modest U.S. effort. But if a non-communist government really takes hold in the Soviet bloc, officials concede there could be pressure from Congress to help Poland more. David Ensor, ABC News, the State Department.
Health news this morning. It is being called a turning point in the treatment of the disease AIDS. Federal researchers say that the drug AZT can delay the onset of AIDS in people who are infected with the virus but show no symptoms. Health and Human Services Secretary Louis Sullivan hailed these findings.
With these results, we are witnessing an additional significant milestone in the battle to change AIDS from a fatal disease to a treatable one.
Scientists are saying this latest finding underlines the importance of early testing for AIDS. Stockton, California, a refugee from Laos killed his wife and held 9 children, including some of his own, hostage before he fatally shot himself in the head. During this tense standoff, which lasted more than 6 hours, police say the man played Russian roulette with some of the children. Environmental organizations have filed suit. They are demanding that Exxon and other members of the oil industry clean up the damage to Alaska's Prince William Sound. Spokesmen say the suit was filed on behalf of all the wildlife that have been threatened by the oil spill. Economic news. The dollar has fallen in overseas trading this morning. Checking the foreign currency markets in London against yesterday's closings in New York, the dollar is down against the yen, the mark, the franc, and the pound. Bell Atlantic has reached a tentative settlement with one of its 2 striking unions, and Stephen Ogg has that story.
Good morning. Bell Atlantic, which serves parts of the mid-Atlantic states, became the first of the 4 struck regional Bell telephone companies to reach an agreement with the striking communications workers. The tentative agreement covers the major regional issues. The union says wages are going up more than 10% over the next 3 years, and the health plan, a major issue, is going to be improved.
This does not mean that the strike is over, but the way has been paved to resolve local issues.
The union says local issues could take 5 more days. On Wall Street, markets reopened following a drop yesterday. The Dow fell almost 14 points. This after the government said the trade deficit during June was the lowest in 4.5 years. That sounds like good news, but Wall Street said it meant the economy is still showing too much strength, so interest rates might not fall. And Robert Freeman, a prominent securities trader, has pleaded guilty to 1 count of mail fraud stemming from insider trading. Freeman was one of 3 prominent traders arrested 2 years ago. Now, the government says it may have been too hasty. Charges against the other 2 have been dropped. Finally, Egghead, the discount computer software chain, being investigated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, apparently over whether the company should have disclosed more information about financial problems. The company says recent losses were due to inventory problems. That was due to a poor computerized accounting system. Apparently, Egghead's inventory is a bit scrambled. That's the economy this morning.
Steve often likes to end his reports with a yoke or 2. And now let's go to Pittsburgh and check in with Charlie once again. Charlie?
I will stay out of the puns for us. Thank you very much. It's 8 minutes after the hour. We are down here by the riverside. Spencer's up on the top of Mount Washington. You can just see his lights right there through the bridge. Spencer, you're about a half a mile away from me, I guess, right?
That's right, Charlie. Not too far, though, as the crow flies. It's a beautiful view up here. I am atop Mount Washington, and of course we have a beautiful view of downtown Pittsburgh, and I'm on the observation deck of the Duquesne Incline. Now, inclines at one time were the way for Pittsburghers who lived in the hilltop communities here to get around, to get up and down these steep slopes before they had automobiles and electric streetcars and even reliable roads. At one time, Pittsburgh had 16 inclines. Right now, the Duquesne is one of only 2 remaining inclines, and I'll be taking a ride on this thing a little bit later in the program, so stay with us to see if I survive it. Right now, let's take a look at today's weather. It's going to be a rather mild day for much of the nation. Highs generally in the 80s through the nation's midsection, even up into the northern plains and northern Rockies. A little bit cooler in the northeastern section of the country from the mid-Atlantic up to the Great Lakes and New England. Highs only in the 70s, and across the southern tier of states, highs will be in the 90s. Now, the outlook calls for a spectacular day in the far western part of the country, mostly sunny skies there. But that monsoonal flow continues in the eastern slopes of the Rockies, linking up with some stormy weather in the northern Rockies, and it's pushing eastward into the plains today. So it's a rather messy weather day in that area. In the eastern portion of the plains, Mississippi Valley, the Great Lakes, and the extreme northeast, sunny skies and comfortable conditions. But from the mid-Atlantic southwestward down into the Tennessee Valley and the lower Mississippi Valley, a messy day with heavy rainfall and severe thunderstorms. In fact, around Virginia now, some areas can expect 3 to 5 inches of rainfall from this system today as it begins to push northeastward and slide up along the coast. It'll be a big rainmaker for the weekend. That's a look at the national weather picture, and here's a look at the weather where you are.
Good morning, everybody. 3/10 of an inch of rain fell at the airport last night, and with more moisture crossing our southern border, well, there's a good chance of thunderstorms again tonight. The Tucson high will warm to about 99 degrees. Have a good Friday. Steve Schill, KGUN 9 Weather.
And in the next half hour, I'll have a weather duet with a long-standing weather giant here in Pittsburgh, Joe DiNardo. Stay tuned. Joan?
All right, Spencer, if you say Pittsburgh, to most people, they will say steel mills, coal smell, but they're wrong because this city has gone through such changes over the last 3 decades. And Paul Long of our ABC affiliate WTAE has been here throughout all the changes, and he now has a unique perspective on how it all happened.
There was a time when Pittsburgh was a shot-in-the-beer town full of steel mills and coal smoke. But over the last 20 years, all of that has changed. Today, the steel mills have given way to a corporate skyline. The air quality is much improved, and so is the quality of life. But there are certain characteristics in Pittsburgh that have not changed. I've been reporting the news in Pittsburgh for 43 years. The Italian neighborhood of Bloomfield hasn't changed a bit. Take Dapper Dan Cercone. He's been cutting hair in Bloomfield for 60 years, and there's no place else he'd rather be.
We know each other, so everybody waves at these people. I don't think there's a person walking by here that I do not know.
You'll never leave here?
No, no, the only time, no, in fact, I tell you, our cemetery is pretty close to Bloomfield. I even got my lot spot up there. So if I ever leave Bloomfield, I'm only about 5-10 blocks away from it.
After World War II, it was obvious downtown Pittsburgh needed a major facelift. Architect Frank Lloyd Wright advised the city fathers to tear the whole place down and start all over again. And that's just what they did. Rebuilt downtown, and with it, the city's economy. Much of the credit in recent years went to Richard Caligiuri, Pittsburgh's dynamic young mayor, whose untimely death last year left the city in shock. Stepping in to rally everyone together was City Council President Sylvie Masloff, a 71-year-old Jewish grandmother who's won the heart of Pittsburgh with her political savvy and grandmotherly charm.
One of the things that I was really hep on was cleanliness. This is something I lived with all my life. And when I became mayor and drove to town every day, I was appalled at some of the filth I saw. And so one of the first things I did early on was buy 7 sweepers to clean the city, and it's made a difference.
We are family. The city's indomitable spirit was in high gear in 1979, when Willie Stargell and the Pittsburgh Pirates, better known as the Family, won the World Series. This is Three Rivers Stadium, home of the Pirates and the Steelers, only team ever to win 4 Super Bowls. Pittsburgh has always been a great sports town, dating back to the time of the steel mills and the coal mines, times when thousands of hard-working men needed something to cheer about. Well, the jobs have changed, and the Pirates and Steelers have come upon some lean seasons, but the fans still come out and cheer just as loudly. Pittsburghers play hard and work hard.
We are family. Get up, everybody,
Hey, Paul Long, what you doing around here?
Well, we just came down to visit some old friends.
I see you on TV.
Excuse me. You see, that's Pittsburghese. Yiz means 2 or less, yins means 3 or more, right?
Right.
We are family. Get up, everybody, sing.
That fountain marks the point where the 3 great rivers of Pittsburgh converge, the Ohio, the Allegheny, and the Monongahela. That's Monongahela, or Monongahela, as some people say, but that's another story. These 3 great rivers have always been the very lifeblood of this city. Today, Pittsburgh is the nation's #1 inland port, and every year, hundreds of thousands of tourists take the local 3-river cruise. Pittsburgh owes a lot to its rivers, its beauty and economic success. And like a river, Pittsburgh flows on toward the future.
And Paul Long is here with me now. I'll bet 43 years ago you would never have guessed the kind of change this place would go through.
No, if you had been here at that time and taken a look at the skyline and then disappeared and come back today, you wouldn't recognize this. This is not the same town.
And yet that was the peak of the city, and yet it was not a great place to live then.
That is correct. With wall-to-wall steel mills for 27 miles up and down these 3 rivers, with all of those smokestacks belching coal smoke, you couldn't keep a white shirt white very long.
Well, boy, has it changed. Nice place to live. Thank you for joining us this morning.
It's the best place to live in the country right now, but I hope you won't spread that around. We're kind of crowded already.
Don't worry, I won't tell anybody.
Thank you.
I wouldn't tell anybody.
Thank you.
All right, Paul. Coming up, we've got the former Steelers, Rocky Bleier, Franco Harris, and Lynn Swan right after this. Stay with us. Night of the Living Dead, Pittsburgh's most famous movie, in our next half hour.
And it's coming up on 18 minutes after the hour. I am just a few hundred yards from Three River Stadium, and of course Pittsburgh is a great sports town, and I think you really can't argue it. The greatest pro football team ever put together with the Steelers in their glory days, and we've got 3 members of the Steelers from those days who came to this city to play, and all of them decided to stay. Rocky Bleier is with us. Great pleasure to have you here. Franco Harris is here, and Lynn Swan is with me as well. Great treat to have all of you guys here. There's a few folks here who are family. Remember those days, absolutely.
We got the Steelers.
Rocky, you came out of Notre Dame. Nobody wanted you, right? The Steelers drafted you in, what, the 127th round or something. What was your reaction when you found out I'm going to come to Pittsburgh to play?
Shock. Only because Pittsburgh was the only one team that I had never heard from. I mean, there was 5. There's 28 teams. I mean, there's 5 teams that had an interest. All of a sudden, Pittsburgh showed up and said, we want you in the 16th round. So,
where was it on your list of teams that you would have preferred to play
I hadn't even thought about it. Really. I mean, I was fortunate just to be picked. But coming to Pittsburgh, I can remember just the year before, the fall before, coming here from the University of Notre Dame, playing University of Pittsburgh, stayed right at the Hilton Hotel down there. Friday night before the game, walked out, looked up, walked down Liberty Avenue, said to myself, who'd ever want to live here? Been here 20 years.
When you came here, well, you were from Penn State, so not far away. But again, what was it like when you first came here? What was your reaction?
When I first got here, it was a nice surprise. But before coming here, believe me, I had all the bad thoughts that everybody else has about Pittsburgh before they get here.
And you come from Southern California,
that's right,
glamour spot of the nation. Your reaction?
Well, I was surprised. I had several phone calls the morning of the draft from different teams, and Pittsburgh called up and said, we're thinking about drafting you. I thought Dallas or San Francisco or Miami would call, the Rams. I get a phone call, and it's the Steelers said, you're coming here. The only thing I knew about Pittsburgh was that they wore black and gold. I said, that's a nice color, will look good.
He was always concerned about his looks.
Joe Green, you know, and I'm glad he's on my team so he won't hit me except at practice. He's a very religious guy because every time he caught a pass, they called it the Immaculate Reception. And we were roommates for 8 years.
What was it, Franco, about this town that made you decide to stay?
Well, I had 2 choices, going back to New Jersey or staying here in Pittsburgh, and I figured I'd stay here in Pittsburgh. I really didn't want to move, and the longer I stayed here, I realized that this is someplace special, and I got to meet a lot of beautiful people here, and I just grew with it. It was great.
Everybody around here, we met a bunch of local folks last night. Everybody says terrific place to live.
It is. The people here are so genuine. There's a good, solid work ethic. I came here under the umbrella of being a flashy kid from California, and what I found out about this city is the people care. And rather than going back to California, I made this my home because you get a real sense of community, like you can have an impact on this city.
Rocky, the thing that I would hate to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers now, because you guys own this town, and everybody must compare the Steelers of today with the team that you guys had. Really awfully tough for these guys, isn't it?
Unfortunately so. You know, I think because as Lynn and Franco had mentioned, there was a real vibrancy that we were fortunate enough to be a part of in the city in the 70s. When we started to win, the city started to turn around. There was civic pride, the construction that took place, even though the steel industry was going down and layoffs, people were proud to be from Pittsburgh, and so all the feelings are still from that era and the good times that they brought. Yeah, it is tough for today. I mean, the kids today who have to play, and fortunately everybody says, you're not like the old Steelers, or you're not like the old guys, and that is a tough art to play underneath.
Everybody's got black and gold tattooed on them somewhere.
Oh, yeah, but this city supported a football team that hadn't won the championship for 40 years before the Steelers won one in 1974. And they always had tough football teams, but the fans came out when they played at Forbes Field and at Pitt and every place else. So even though the team's not doing well now, we always have that feeling these people will be here for us, and that young team will eventually have a chance to develop.
Yeah. Franco, a lot of difference in that skyline from when you came here?
No doubt about it.
As many years ago?
Like, the thing is, it was a great city, and it just keeps improving. And that's one of the beautiful things about it.
Well, 3 residents, an unsolicited testimonial here.
That's right.
Actually, it was solicited. We asked them to come down. Great to see you guys again. Great to see you out of uniform as well together. Nice to have you here. Rocky Blyer, Franco Harris, Lynn Swan, thank you. Good morning, America. We'll continue. We'll be back.
Hi, I'm Clark Martin of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we're from the Animal Rescue League of Western Pennsylvania. Good morning, America!
And good morning, America. It is Friday, August 18th. I'm Joan London with Charles Gibson. We are in Pittsburgh this morning, and this is a city that has really transformed itself from a heavy industrial and steel-making city into a city of high technology, and it is frontline technologies and service and a big headquarters for a lot of corporations, and we're going to be talking with 2 of the men this morning who helped bring about a lot of those changes.
And this city lays claim to a lot of firsts. First indoor skating rink in this town. First Big Mac was served in this town.
I knew you'd notice that.
I have heard that they serve Big Macs now in other towns. I'm not sure of that rumor, but I think I've been able to find them here and there. Also, the town where the first movie theater was, 1905. It was a Nickelodeon movie theater, and it was a double feature.
Yes?
Poor But Honest and Baffled Burglar was the double feature. Joel missed it, but he'll have a review in a couple of weeks. It has also become a first city actually for movies now. A lot of movies are made here. About 24 in recent years, and one of the most famous movie makers comes from this town, George Romero. He's probably best known, I guess, for Night of the Living Dead. Anyway, we're going to show you how he goes about making movies in his native town of Pittsburgh. Right now, we go to Forrest Sawyer, who has the news. Forrest, good morning.
Thanks, Charlie, and good morning, everyone. Federal doctors are saying that the drug AZT delays the onset of the disease AIDS and should be given to hundreds of thousands of people who do have the virus but show no symptoms. On Nightline last night, Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, called these findings a very important step.
The people who have absolutely no symptoms will have a delay in the onset of either advanced ARC or AIDS, and the people who have very mild symptoms will have a delay in the progression to serious symptoms, advanced ARC or AIDS.
And other medical news to report this morning. New research suggests that people whose high blood pressure is lowered too much too quickly may suffer unnecessary heart attacks. A report in the American Medical Association says doctors should exercise caution in treating people who have moderately high blood pressure. And federal researchers report that chronic lung disease is still on the rise. More than 71,000 Americans a year die from illnesses like emphysema and bronchitis, mostly that is caused by smoking. And international news this morning, Poland's President Wojciech Jaruzelski has accepted in principle a solidarity-led coalition to govern the country and could nominate a non-communist prime minister as early as today. Joining us in Washington to discuss this is former Czechoslovakian diplomat Dr. Milan Cvek. He is now a fellow at the U.S. Institute for Peace. Dr. Cvek, good morning.
Good morning.
Do you believe that as it appears now, the transition, which is a remarkable one, will move forward peacefully?
I think that there is a pretty good chance that it will go forward peacefully. It's not that communists in the Soviet Union and in Poland even like it, but there is no other reasonable alternative. You either keep Poland under communist and Soviet control, under tight control, and the Poland will be rebellious and hungry, or you give it a chance with the democracy. That's the only reasonable option, really.
Fair to say that Solidarity's problems, or the coalition's problems now, are going to be tremendous as they try to deal with the economic issues that Poland faces?
They will face tremendous problems. Poland's economy is really on the verge of bankruptcy, and it is a real tough job to move this forward. But if they succeed, they will have a potential to change Poland for the better, and that will put all Eastern Europe on the way of democracy. It is a precedent, and I hope they will succeed.
Czechoslovakia faces its own troubles as they look at the anniversary of the uprising in 1968. What do you expect will happen there?
Czechoslovak government and the party and the people are watching Poland very carefully. And what will happen in Poland definitely will influence Czechoslovakia, because the people will ask, okay, if the Poles can go as far as having a non-communist prime minister, why we in Czechoslovakia cannot move faster with the reforms? And it will be very difficult for the party or anybody in Czechoslovakia to say, people, just keep quiet.
Former Czechoslovakian diplomat Dr. Milan Speck, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
The Soviet Union is apparently taking developments in Poland quite calmly. The Foreign Ministry says the forming of the Polish government is the internal business of the Poles. And the Soviets continue to be more open in facing their own internal problems. State-controlled Soviet television reports the crime rate is soaring. And last night took the unusual step of showing the arrest here of mafia-style gang members. And a last word back at home, a 2-year battle over a family pet has finally been settled in Ventura, California. A judge has ruled that Ragtime, the miniature horse, yes, sir, it's a house pet and not livestock, and there's proof of it. He's suitable for suburbia, and owner Patty Fairchild proved it by bringing Ragtime, the horse, in with the St. Bernard to court. The judge saw that Ragtime is just about the right size for a pet in the house. That's the latest news up to the moment. Let's check in now with Spencer Christian. Spencer?
All right, Forrest, the weather is such a complicated matter here in Pittsburgh. We had to fly in some help to help me out here. Joe DiNardo from our affiliate WTIE, the chief meteorologist here. How you doing, Joe?
Fine, Spence. Welcome to Pittsburgh. It's nice to have you here.
Well, I tell you, it's windy and cold up here.
You know what?
Hills.
Temperature outside 62 degrees, but I think with a 20-knot wind, we've got a wind chill of about 40 above. It is cold up here.
Yeah, you're right. And even though the sun is out, we still haven't warmed up much yet.
It's going to take a few hours yet, but at least you can see the beautiful city of Pittsburgh. There's not too much haze around today. It's gorgeous around here.
Great view. Great view.
It is.
Let's take a look at the maps for the nation.
Right.
Coming up today, we figure a nice mild day for much of the country, generally highs in the 80s. A little warm down in the deep south, highs in the 90s, but cool up where we are, Joe.
Well, we had it in the 70s. We're probably going to get up to about 79, 80 degrees here in Pittsburgh, but south and east of us, along the east coast, it's going to be kind of damp today.
Oh, a little damp, that's right. Well, we'll see in just a second where that dampness is coming from. A big rainmaker pushing up into the Appalachians and the Alleghenies right now.
Some sections of West Virginia, over in through Virginia, up through New Jersey, Maryland, the nation's capital, are going to see about 2 to 4 inches of rainfall starting tonight and continuing through tomorrow. It's going to be kind of wet over there.
Messy weekend building for the Northeast as well.
Right.
It's sunny in the extreme Northeast today, though. It will be sunny over the Great Lakes and down through the Mississippi Valley. That monsoonal flow continues out in the southern Rockies. That's linking up with a little disturbance in the northern plains.
Really develops out there in the summertime, afternoon thunderstorms, so they'll be getting them out there again today.
Oh, yeah. And, of course, sunny on the West Coast, but what else, right?
That's it, always. That's great weather. It's not going to be that bad here in Pittsburgh, though. I think we'll have our showers hold off till about 5, 6 o'clock tonight. And they'll only be pretty widely scattered tonight and tomorrow morning, but south of us and east of us and along the coast, going to be kind of damp.
Okay, that's a look at the national weather. Here's a look at the weather where you are.
Hello, everybody. Clouds will grow over our mountains this afternoon, spilling into the valley after about 5 o'clock. That'll mean a chance of thunderstorms. Today's Tucson high, 99 degrees, Benson and Bisbee each at 88. Have a good Friday. Steve Schill, KGUN 9 Weather.
And that's a look at our weather.
Well, hey, listen, it's great to have you here. I normally don't get to see a morning rush hour in Pittsburgh. We're kind of late at night. You know?
I know you do.
I want to give you one of our WTAE TV shirts and also one of the hats. And did you bring me a cake?
A cake? I didn't bring a cake.
You didn't bring the cake.
I'll bring it next time.
Do that.
Joe, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Spence. Good having you, and enjoy the city.
Thank you.
It's a great one.
All right, Joe DiNardo, folks, and we'll have more Good Morning America coming up in just a moment. Stay with us.
It is coming up now on 20 minutes before 8. Well, you can debate with any city whether or not it's a place that dreams are made, but no question that Pittsburgh is a place where nightmares are made. Joel Siegel explains.
You may not know it, but Pittsburgh is one of our country's leading cultural centers. This is the outdoor garden at the Phipps Conservatory, one of the first botanical gardens. The Pittsburgh Symphony, that's Lauren Mazel conducting, is a world-class orchestra. There's also a Pittsburgh Opera and a Pittsburgh Ballet. Van Gogh and Monet's water lilies all hang at the Carnegie Museum. And Pittsburgh is also a film center. On a winter day in 1968, a radioactive cloud passed over. Everything that was dead came back to life, and Pittsburgh became the horror movie capital of the world. Is it over?
That is the scariest movie I have ever seen.
Okay, stand by, please. Here we go.
And that's the man who scared me half to death, and probably you too. George Romero, one of America's premier horror film directors. We're on the set of Two Evil Eyes with Adrienne Barbeau, the 11th horror film he's directed, all in Pittsburgh, where a movie industry has grown up around him.
Probably 5 or 6 films shoot here every year. Since Flashdance, Pittsburgh sort of became an element. Yeah, hot. I can get you Pittsburgh. Oh, wow. So a lot of films shoot here now on an annual basis, so it's not just us guys, but I've been doing these little horrors here for, gosh, I hate to think how many years, 20 years, yeah.
It's been 21 years since George Romero made Night of the Living Dead for $72,000. It's since grossed hundreds of millions of dollars, as in grossed out. The film really did give me nightmares, in part because the almost amateur acting and the grainy, almost out-of-focus look and the Pittsburgh locations made it seem more real than the slick, you-know-it's-not-real Hollywood horror films. This was something you shouldn't be watching, something that might be true.
It has a nitty-gritty feeling to it, and, you know, probably the fact that we only had 5 or 6 lights to our name had something to do with that. Most of the zombies in that movie were people from the ad game back in those days, all our clients and friends that worked with us, and everyone sort of came out as a goof and had a few beers and put some makeup on and stumbled around looking like Frankenstein.
And what is that stuff that they're carrying? You must like use it at every butcher shop in Pittsburgh.
That's actually what it was. It's stuff, the entrails that came from the slaughterhouse down over in the Strip District over there. The real stuff.
Why do you smile when you say that?
Well, I find it, actually, it's what we still use. There's, you know, it's pretty hard to manufacture anything that looks that way, so I think it's what Tom Savini still uses whenever he needs to do an effect like that.
This is Tom Savini, another Pittsburgh artist who's done the most revolting special effects for Romero's movies like Creepshow and Monkey Shines. He's also done the Friday the 13th series, and is at work on these horrors for the current Romero film. The script calls for frozen cadavers, cats gone berserk, all in a day's work.
You know, we try to do everything the script says. Our motto is, nothing's impossible, it's just a matter of working it out.
Yeah, but wasn't it nicer when all they made in Pittsburgh was steel? Probably quieter, too. A lot fewer people screaming.
The supernatural has always just sort of delighted me. You know, people that love it, it's sort of like people who like roller coaster rides. You know, if you love supernatural horror, fantasy, science fiction, or whatever, it's a hoot, it's a giggle. It's not anything to be afraid of. It's you sort of go and celebrate it, you know.
And after 3 zombie features, Dawn of the Dead, shot in a Pittsburgh shopping mall, made more than $50 million. Like ball club owners get letters from old friends who want World Series tickets, Romero gets mail from all over the world. Everybody wants to be a zombie.
And everyone wants, you know, the best makeup, and everyone wants to bite somebody. And you know, it's no good to just be a zombie and stumble around in the background. You know, you have to be an aggressive zombie and get a close-up where you chew on someone's arm or something.
But no zombies in Two Evil Eyes, 2 Edgar Allan Poe stories done for an Italian producer-director. Romero directs one, the Italian directs the other.
And he called and said, gee, what would you think if we got together and did some Edgar Allan Poe stories? And I said, great. I thought, wow, a chance to go and work in Rome. And they said, no, we want to come to Pittsburgh.
Romero is making Two Evil Eyes at the local public broadcasting station, which is also the place they shoot Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, there's a contrast. It is now 44 minutes after the hour. A look at perhaps Frank Lloyd Wright's most famous house when Good Morning America continues.
One of Pittsburgh's best-known and most beloved spots is really not here in Pittsburgh. It's about 50 miles southeast of here, and it is a spot on the banks of a beautiful mountain stream that attracts over 100,000 people per year. Bear Run is about 2 hours outside Pittsburgh. Its rushing waters attract so much attention because of this astonishing building, one that some architects consider the most important house built in the 20th century. It's Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, cantilevered dramatically over the falls. Pittsburgh department store magnate Edgar Kaufman commissioned Wright to build the house on their family campgrounds back in 1935. It was the middle of the Great Depression, and as New York Times architecture critic Paul Goldberger points out, Wright needed the work.
I didn't have a lot of paying clients coming asking him to do things,
And a lot of people in those years thought of Frank Lloyd Wright as sort of the most promising has-been in American architecture. You know, it's a house that really did change Frank Lloyd Wright's career. It changed the way people looked at architecture. It became, probably as much as any house in modern times, an icon.
Falling water is an engineering marvel as much as an architectural wonder. Rising right out of the rock is the central core that holds the building up. All the terraces and rooms and balconies are suspended out into space so that they seem to float. You can hear the waterfall from every room. And from the living room, you can step right into the stream, down a staircase that Wright designed so that the Kaufmans could take an icy dip each morning. Wright believed the architect should design the entire house, not just the walls and ceilings. And every room has some special touch, like this desktop with a cutout so the window can open. Everywhere, Wright tried to bring the outdoors indoors. And here at the living room hearth, you can actually see the boulder on which the house is built rising right out of the floor.
Falling water asserts itself. Falling water tells you that an architect was here in capital letters. But it takes its cues from the site. It's a kind of testament about a dream about architecture. It stands there to say to other architects and other clients that if you have a dream, it can be done, in fact. That you can do something extraordinary and make of it something beautiful, humane, civilized, and magical.
And coming up, two of this town's top movers and shakers on how Pittsburgh turns itself around right after this from Post Serial. Telling you all morning, this place has certainly survived the decline of the steel industry. And with me right now are two of the top movers and shakers here in this city that have been a great part of the Pittsburgh Renaissance. With me, Bob Pease. He is the executive director of the Allegheny Conference on Community Development, which is an alliance of private businesses. And also Jack Robin is chairman of the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh. And we welcome both of you. We're enjoying your beautiful city. You know, Bob, the Pittsburgh Renaissance, as I understand it, has really kind of taken place in a number of stages. Take us back to when the first one started.
Well, the first one really started at the end of World War II when Pittsburgh was a smoky, filthy city. Yeah. No one wanted to live in Pittsburgh. In fact, I came from Nebraska. I didn't want to live in Pittsburgh either. But the businessmen and the mayor, David Lawrence, who was a very strong leader, worked together to do two things: to control the smoke and to control the floods that used to flood these areas every spring when the snow would melt and the rains came. The success of those two efforts was so dramatic that all the people of Pittsburgh adopted an attitude: if we can do that, we can do anything.
So first stage number one was to clean the place up.
It really was.
Then I guess it was really in the early 80s that the big, building stage happened, right?
There were two phases. First, we had what we call the first Renaissance, which came in the period Bob Pease just described. After the Second World War, we created the Urban Renewal Agency. We cleared this area, which is probably on television now, created Point Park and Gateway Center and Mellon Square. We really began to change the business district substantially. Then we also had, under Mayor Caligiuri, our late mayor, another Renaissance period. And we really, I think, were able to change the face of Pittsburgh more substantially than any American city, I think, in the urban history of the country.
What's really interesting, too, is when you read about all this, the unbelievable cooperation between the public and private sector. I mean, you don't see that kind of cooperation all the time.
I often say if there's a secret to Pittsburgh's successes, that's it. The fact that there is a great deal of trust between the private sector and the public sector. They work together, they plan together. Frequently, the county commissioners or the mayor might even come to my organization and say, would you help us with this particular project? And they know if we say yes that we will and we'll deliver. But by the same token, we might go to the public officials and say, we have an idea of something we think might work, but you'll have to do it because you carry out the big public projects. And then we work together and they carry it out. It's a magnificent story.
Can this city become as successful as a service and technology center as it was as a steelmaker?
Well, we're proving that right now. Our unemployment rate is down to 4%, which is astonishing compared to where we were 5 years ago. But what we've been very lucky here, we've had good civic leadership, but we've had remarkable political leadership. We've had good mayors for 50 years. We had two very great mayors, Mayor Lawrence and Mayor Caligari. We have an outstanding chairman of our Board of Commissioners in the county, Mr. Forrester, who is putting in a wonderful new airport for Pittsburgh. And this relationship has been good. I think the public officials in our leadership positions have been so good that confidence has been maintained over this long, long period.
And I can tell you that from talking to people here in Pittsburgh, you got everybody, it seems, behind you, everybody that lives here, so it's great. It's nice to meet you, too.
Well, I'm a native, Bob's an immigrant, and we get along fine.
That's terrific. Well,
nice
we're all enjoying ourselves here. Thank you, gentlemen.
It's nice to have you in Pittsburgh.
You bet. It's our pleasure. And Good Morning America continues in just a moment. We'll be back.
Good Morning America is brought to you by Reebok.
And coming up, Dr. Nancy Snyderman will be with us, taking a look at the incredible breakthroughs here in the kidney and liver transplants. Also, a look at the role of these three rivers here, how they all come together.
And we're going to meet the mayor, Sylvie Masloff, who is here. And we are going to also take a ride up the Duquesne Incline, the funicular railway that goes up to where Spencer is on Mount Washington. After you ride up, you sort of feel like you're not quite on the level. Our second hour coming up. We'll be right back.
Paula Abdul and Oleg Cassini, all on the next Live.
You are looking at Pittsburgh's skyline, completely revitalized in 20 years. The cold smoke of olden days all gone. In its place, the shimmering glass and steel of Pittsburgh's widely acclaimed new skyscrapers. Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson, and we are here in Pittsburgh today. It is Friday, August 18th, and it's nice to be here on the riverfront.
You bet. I'm Joan Lennon, and this is the skyline back here behind us. We are actually in the Roberto Clemente Park, and we should say that the Roberto Clemente, of course, died in 1972 in a plane crash, tragic plane crash. He would have been 55 years old today. One of the best Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the best
Pirates.
One of the best baseball players ever. Outfielder, right? Oh,
yep.
Oh, okay, wait a minute.
You see this going by.
Can you see this? I mean, you got to stop to look at this. This is not something you see every day. Look at that.
You got a water skiing dog going by.
Can you believe that?
I don't think that normally happens here in the morning.
No, I don't imagine so. Roberto Clemente,
If
yeah.
anybody ever saw him play ball in the 60s and early 70s, he was one of the most, he was the first great Latin ball player, I think, and one of the most graceful ball players ever. Beautiful to watch and had a great throwing arm.
And really loved, because a lot of people said to us, please remember Roberto Clemente this morning, because he would have been 55 years old today. Also, you know, it's hard to believe, but there are really very few steel jobs left in this city. It's kind of a college town, actually. I think University of Pittsburgh is the biggest employer. It also, of course, is a center for liver and kidney transplants, and Dr. Nancy Snyderman is going to be along with a look at that.
Yeah, I think that does amaze people, that actually more people employed at the University of Pittsburgh than anywhere else in this town. Everybody would think, of course, it's U.S. Steel, but no longer the case. Also with us in this hour is going to be the mayor of Pittsburgh, Sylvie Masloff. She is a very colorful character. Another colorful character, Andy Warhol, comes from here. His brother is going to be with us. And Spencer is here, but of course. Spencer?
Well, up atop Mount Washington, overlooking downtown Pittsburgh. It's the height of the morning rush hour here at the Duquesne Incline, which is a rather unique way that Pittsburghers in this hilltop community have of getting around up and down the steep slopes here. And I'm going to introduce you to the woman who runs this incline a little bit later, and I'll be taking a ride on it myself if I can maintain my nerve. Back to you, Charlie and Joan.
All right, Spencer, and leading the news this morning, Poland could be getting a non-communist government. And Forrest Sawyer is back in New York. He has that story and all the other news of the day. Good morning, Forrest.
Morning, Joan. Good morning, everyone. The lead story is in Eastern Europe. The morning headlines in Warsaw reflecting the startling changes occurring in Poland. A pro-Solidarity newspaper ran a photograph of Solidarity official Tadeusz Mazowiecki with the headline, "Our Prime Minister." Mazowiecki is, in fact, the candidate considered most likely to be named head of a new Solidarity government. There, of course, you see Lech Wałęsa. The announcement coming from Communist Party President Wojciech Jaruzelski. He is the man who crushed Solidarity 8 years ago. Jim Hickey joins us now from Warsaw. What are the latest developments this morning, Jim?
Good morning, Forrest. There are reports here that Tadeusz Mazowiecki has
It's not confirmed yet. A press spokesman for President Jaruzelski tells us, however, there should be some public decision on the Prime Minister, perhaps by the end of the day. So we are waiting for that. Mazowiecki is a close advisor of Solidarity leader Lech Wałęsa, and he is a Solidarity member of the Polish Parliament.
Jim, we should be clear in pointing out that the communists will continue to play an important role in the government.
Well, it will continue to play an important role, but it's not going to be the role that it's traditionally had. And the Communist Party here is lamenting that role, that once it was on top of the government in Poland, and now it's going to play a role of the opposition, which is incredible in the Eastern Bloc.
Jim Hickey reporting from Warsaw, Poland. Thank you very much, Jim. President Bush, vacationing in Maine, has said nothing publicly about the events in Poland, but his spokesman has called the changes remarkable here on vacation in Kennebunkport, Maine. State Department officials say they hope the Polish people are allowed to decide their own future without outside interference. It appears the Soviets are saying the same thing, as Rick Inderfirth reports.
The only official Soviet reaction to events in Poland has been low-key and hands-off.
The forming of the Polish government is the internal business of Poles.
The Soviet Evening News has been just as restrained. Last night it offered a gloomy report on the economic situation in Poland, including strikes and chronic food shortages. An announcer read a brief statement on Lech Wałęsa's offer to form a new government. He did so without comment. What a difference 20 years makes. The last time one of the Soviet's East European allies threatened to break ranks with socialism, Czechoslovakia in 1968, Soviet tanks moved in. But that was before the era of Mikhail Gorbachev and his new policy toward Eastern Europe. Addressing the Council of Europe last month, he said, "Any attempt to interfere in the domestic affairs of other nations, both friends and allies or any others, is inadmissible." Congressman Les Aspin has been in Moscow meeting with Soviet officials.
I came away with the impression that they would bend over backward in every way to avoid the kind of thing that happened when they did use troops in the past, but it is still not out of the question.
Intervention in Poland does appear to be the last thing the Soviets want, knowing that it would destroy the goodwill Mikhail Gorbachev has built up abroad and deal a major blow to his reform program at home. Rick Inderfirth, ABC News, Moscow.
And one other change to report, the Kremlin has proposed constitutional changes in hopes of ending the nationalist conflicts in many of its 15 republics. An article in the party newspaper Pravda offered few details of the changes, but the proclamation said the republics would be given more power and more independence. Now to the Middle East. In Israel's occupied Gaza Strip, Palestinian leaders are calling a general strike to protest the use of mandatory computer identification cards. Soldiers at Israeli checkpoints yesterday began turning back Palestinians who did not carry the new cards. There are fewer people going through Israeli checkpoints today, but Israeli officials say the Sabbath, not the strike, is keeping people home. Here in the United States, a breakthrough in the battle against AIDS. It involves a new application of a well-known drug, and George Strait reports.
It was the best news for AIDS victims since AZT was approved 3 years ago.
We are indeed entering the period when AIDS may become a treatable disease.
What researchers found was that AZT, given to persons carrying the AIDS virus but with no symptoms, can delay the onset of the disease for up to a year. Besides prolonging life, the findings underscore the value of early testing for the AIDS virus.
In order to fully benefit from treatment, it will be crucial for a person to know early that he or she may be infected.
An estimated 600,000 persons who test positive for the AIDS virus could be helped, but that will be expensive. AZT can cost up to $10,000 a year per patient, which means at least an extra $6 billion added to the nation's health care bill. Despite the cost, the discovery that a drug may be able to actually control, if not cure, AIDS marks a real milestone in the battle against this disease. George Strait, ABC News, New York.
And now the weekend news calendar. Immigration authorities will decide the fate of a Chinese defector who arrived in Los Angeles 7 weeks ago. Some officials say she should be deported. Saturday, Pope John Paul begins a weekend visit to Spain. Sunday, Hungarian Catholics will parade their holiest relic around Budapest. It is a casket said to hold the hand of St. Stephen, Hungary's founding king. And tonight on 2020, John Stossel takes us to Gallup, New Mexico, where alcoholism is taking a deadly toll on the people. And a last word, for years, possums, raccoons, even small dogs had a way of disappearing from a Fort Lauderdale neighborhood, and now animal trappers have taken care of the reason. They have captured the 20-foot, 250-pound python that residents say used to pop down coons like marshmallows. It took 11 men to pull the snake out from under a house, and they say that it lived in the neighborhood for years. And that's the news, so that means, Joe, the next time you hear something under your house, you never know quite what it might be.
You bet. All right, thank you, Forrest. Right now, we're going to go back up the incline here, back up Mount Washington, where Spencer Christian is standing by with the weather. Spencer?
Okay, Joe, not only do I have a great view of Pittsburgh from here, but a great view of the nation's weather. Let's take a look at it. It's going to be a mostly sunny day in the far western part of the country. And down through the Mississippi Valley up into the Great Lakes and the Northeast, clear skies as well. But a stormy day and a very, very rainy day in the mid-Atlantic states, and rain reaching southwestward from that area down into the lower Mississippi Valley. 3 to 5 inches of rainfall likely in some portions of the mid-Atlantic, and that big system will be a big rainmaker, rather, for the weekend as it moves up the coast and makes for a wet weekend for the Northeast. It's also going to be a wet day in the eastern slopes of the Rockies, and all that moisture is moving eastward into the western portion of the plains, and that's going to be a continuous pattern through the weekend as well. High temperatures today generally in the 80s through the nation's midsection and up north, except in the Northeast, where highs will be a little bit cooler in the 70s, and it'll still be warm and sticky in the Southeast, highs in the 90s, in the Southwest, hot and dry, highs in the 90s and hundreds. That's a look at the national weather picture, and here's a look at the weather where you are.
Good morning, everybody. 3/10 of an inch of rain fell at the airport last night, and with more moisture crossing our southern border, well, there's a good chance of thunderstorms again tonight. The Tucson high will warm to about 99 degrees. Have a good Friday. Steve Schill, KGUN 9 Weather.
And joining me now is Sam McCool, a man who has written this book entitled Pittsburghese, How to Speak Like a Pittsburgher. And Sam, I wish I'd had this book yesterday, because I got in a cab and said, take me downtown, and the guy didn't understand what I was saying.
Well, you should have said downtown.
Downtown.
Yeah, you don't hear long vowels in this town. We say op for out, like I'm going out tonight. It's a serious statement, like going out, op. We say, for fire, we say far.
Far.
For tire, we say tar. Causes some confusion between words like towel and tile. Pittsburghers say them the same way as tall. Like oil and owl. Right. We say all for them. We put all in the car, and there's all in the woods.
And what do you do to the house when you have visitors coming over?
We red it up.
Red it up?
Yes.
Well, that means to ready it up, I guess.
Well, clean it up.
Clean it up, right.
People coming over, you only have time to red it up.
And when you take your car through the car...
Well, the car needs washed.
Car needs washed?
Yeah, well, we leave things out, like to be. You probably hear it as the car needs to be washed.
Okay, well, I think we're all washed up right now, Sam. Okay. Thanks for helping me understand Pittsburgh.
You're welcome.
Okay, yeah. More on the big storms moving up to the Northeast in the next half hour. Charlie?
Close, Spencer. All right, you know, we've been telling you all morning how Pittsburgh is a place that really has created a second life for itself. But in fact, it is also a place, as our medical correspondent, Dr. Nancy Snyderman, now tells us, that also gives a second lease on life to a lot of critically ill people.
Tabitha Foster, Stormy Jones. The names and faces of these transplant patients may be familiar to you, but the place behind the stories may not be as familiar. The University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. It's here that patients come from all over the world, and it's here that more organ transplants are done than any place else. It's also here that lives are changed.
Come on down here and let's have a real look at you, can we?
Dr. Thomas Starzl, director of the University of Pittsburgh Transplant Program, is one of the reasons Pittsburgh has gained such prominence as a transplant center. Starzl performed the first liver transplant in the country and is also credited with perfecting cyclosporin, a drug that keeps the body from rejecting organs. What do you enjoy the most about medicine?
Well, I enjoy taking care of patients and learning things and finding out what diseases that are treated futilely and trying to figure out ways to treat them. So I think the essential interface in my life is with patients.
Starzl's career has not been without controversy. Several years ago, the Pittsburgh Press raised ethical questions about the manner in which organs were matched to recipients. Hearings were held, and it was decided that no charges would be brought against Starzl. But questions over organ procurement remained, and some changes have been made, like the development of the United Network for Organ Sharing, a nationwide computer system. The system, shown here at the Pittsburgh Transplant Foundation, matches, on the basis of medical need, donors to those needing organs.
How is the system today different from the one of 1981-82?
Well, it's probably more formally organized, where now all the patients are listed on a national sharing system, and by law, we really have to utilize that system for patient selection so that there is fairness in the system. Everybody gets treated the same.
Despite the progress of the computer system, the problem remains of having enough donors.
We're always behind, and we continue to get more and more behind here. So I think the criteria for patient selection is going to have to change somewhat, and also we're going to have to do a lot of innovative things to expand the donor pool.
Still, the current system does work for many, like Pittsburgh resident Lou Kovac, who received a liver transplant.
It's extended my life, I think, 14 months since I've gotten it. It's changed my whole perspective on life. I'm now able to see my kids grow up, and days are a lot more pleasant, and life isn't as hectic.
Since his surgery, Lou also volunteers at the hospital, helping those who are waiting for transplants.
Very few of our transplant patients seem to come from Pittsburgh, so they had no one to come in and actually do volunteer work, to talk to people waiting for transplants.
Because so many of the transplant patients are not from Pittsburgh, Family House, a sort of home away from home, was established. Run mostly by volunteers, Family House offers families of transplant patients, as well as actual patients, a supportive place to stay.
It's meant a lot. It's a really nice place to come back.
Mary Smith from Michigan has been at Family House for several weeks while her mother is hospitalized following a double lung transplant.
It makes you feel like people really care, and everybody has been so warm here, always asking, you know, how's your mom today, and taking time to sit down and talk to you.
For Kim Peterson, a bone marrow transplant patient, Family House has meant the difference between isolation in a hospital and interacting with other people.
It means not going in the hospital for 100 days and having to stay there. It's like another home. I've got to stay in the area, you know. I'd rather be home, but if I can't be home, I'm glad I'm here.
From emotional support to medical treatment, Pittsburgh has become a transplant center filled with stories of survival.
I expected to live a full and complete life, be able to be around and see my kids grow up and maybe graduate from high school and raise a family. Something that I think every parent would want to do.
Come on, Brad. All right.
Coming up next, life along Pittsburgh's rivers right after this. Stay with us.
It is now 18 minutes after the hour. We've talked a lot about the revitalization of the city of Pittsburgh, the downtown area. There has also been a revitalization of the rivers here, and they are vitally important to the city, the Allegheny, the Monongahela, and the Ohio rivers. And we have with us two men who know it well. Ed Muller is with us. He is a professor of history at the University of Pittsburgh who has studied the rivers, and Jack Gessling has sailed them for over 30 years as fleet captain of the Gateway Clipper, a popular tourist excursion boat here in Pittsburgh. Nice to have you both with us.
It's me.
And Ed, I read a very interesting piece that you wrote about how the rivers really are used and considered in Pittsburgh. Obviously, when this was a great bustling industrial town, the rivers were vital to Pittsburgh. But you write that they really haven't considered them properly, you didn't feel, now that the Renaissance has come.
Well, yes. My point is that in the last 10 years or so, we've had an opportunity to begin to use these rivers as part of our lifestyle, to improve the quality of our life as an amenity. And it's been very hard for the population to think of our rivers in those terms, because for years we have thought of them as part of our industrial life. And they weren't real rivers.
It's interesting because living in New York, I find the same thing true in that city, that obviously everybody likes, you know, pay a lot of money for a view of the Hudson or the East River or whatever, but it's really not an integrated part of city life.
That's exactly the point. And we are on the threshold of having these rivers become an integrated part of our quality of life. The environment is improving. There's game fishing now. People are starting to row on the rivers. As you saw today, dogs water ski on them. We have a great opportunity here to have water become part of our city as it is in places like Seattle and Minneapolis, where the lakes are part of the life of the city.
Cap Gessling, why has that change come in the river? Is it because of all the cleanup programs that we talk so much about, or was it simply because industry moved away and that cleaned up?
No, I think even with the industry here 31 years ago with the sanitation system and so forth going in, they've done a terrific job cleaning up the three rivers here, and we're bringing more and more people to the rivers for recreation. The boating, water skiing, there's so many activities taking place here, and we bring hundreds of tourists in there every year.
What changes have you seen in the river?
Well, it's changed drastically. You can't even imagine how it's changed unless you've been here. I've been here for 31 years running up and down here on these passenger vessels, and it's just turned around completely from the waste and so forth going into the rivers to the clean streams with the water activity, and it's amazing.
Ed, I come back to the point you make, though. You talk about using the rivers really as an amenity of present life, but how do you do that? How do you really integrate it into people's daily lives?
The key here is to make them accessible to the population. When the industries and the railroads were along the edges, you could not get to the rivers unless you trespassed and took your life in your own hands. As the city and the county are beginning to build strip parks, such as Roberto Clemente Park here, where people can come down from their homes in the evening, walk along the rivers, enjoy water in its various morning and evening stages. And that's the key, is making it accessible so that citizens can integrate it into their daily life.
Very interesting example. Pittsburgh builds a new stadium a number of years ago.
Yes.
To put it in a beautiful site right along the river, Three Rivers Stadium, you can see it now, and yet you say they did it all wrong.
Well, they did. One of the plans was to have it open at the end so that it could look across onto the fountain and onto the skyscrapers and the beautiful view of the city, and it would have made it a unique setting. They decided not to do that for cost reasons. And in hindsight, indeed, one of your guests who was here this morning, who was involved in that process, has said this to me, that was a mistake, that it should have been oriented towards the water and towards this park that we're on now, and we would have had a unique stadium.
Don't close it in.
Don't close it in and have that view. And indeed, that's what they're doing now, not with the stadium, but they're putting up a new science center just below the stadium. There's new developments going on all the way up here, up the river. And indeed, in the future, we're going to have a water recreational loop, I believe, where tourists can come into the city, buy a ticket on the Gateway Clipper, and be able to go to the new Science Center, to go to the water park that's up the Monongahela, to go to a new steel museum that we're creating.
And you'll take them all when they come on the boat, right?
We'll take them all and we'll educate them.
Educate?
To our rivers. We are educating people every day to bring them down to our rivers. They've become more than just rivers.
Cap Gessling, Ed Mull, thank you both for being with us. Very interesting on the way cities ought to be using rivers. 23 minutes after the hour, Good Morning America will continue.
From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Good morning, America.
And welcome once again to Pittsburgh. Good morning, I'm Joan London.
And I'm Charles Gibson, this morning in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Not from, but in.
That's right, and this is no longer the Smoky City, but it certainly is, it's called one of the most livable city in the United States, and it has an incredible political and business leadership, and they work together remarkably. And in this half hour, we are going to meet the mayor, Sophie Masloff.
And I'm going to ask her the critical question that has always fascinated me about this city. Always. Why in the world do they put an H at the end of the... at the end of the word? I've actually written a little poem on this subject.
I know you have, and it's very good. Wait till you hear this.
I labored over this for hours and hours. We are also going to have Spencer taking a ride on the Duquesne Incline, the railway, funicular railway that goes up there to the top of Mount Washington, where he is situated today doing the weather. And we are also going to have with us in this half hour the brother, he himself from Pittsburgh, and brother of a famous Pittsburghian, I guess, if that's the way you say it. Andy Warhol's brother is going to be with us. Andy Warhol grew up right here in Pittsburgh. We'll be talking a little bit about his art and his heritage. Right now we go to Forrest Sawyer as the news. Forrest, good morning.
Morning, Charlie. Good morning, everyone. And the big news is from Eastern Europe. There are unconfirmed reports this morning that Polish President Wojciech Jaruzelski has asked a Solidarity leader to become the new prime minister. According to Solidarity sources, Jaruzelski did make the offer in a meeting today with Tadeusz Mazowiecki. It was not known if he accepted. Mazowiecki is in his early 60s. He is editor-in-chief of the weekly Solidarity newspaper, and he is a close confidant of Lech Wałęsa. Mazowiecki is trained as a lawyer. He has strong ties to the Roman Catholic Church, and he was jailed under martial law that Jaruzelski declared back in 1981. Jim Hickey is following all of these remarkable developments from Warsaw. Good morning, Jim, and what's the latest from there?
Good morning, Forrest. Well, Mazowiecki, as you point out, is being considered now and may be the next Polish prime minister as chosen by General Jaruzelski. We can report to you that Mazowiecki is meeting with President Jaruzelski even now as we speak. He is 62 years old and, as you pointed out, the least known, the least public known figure of Solidarity and considered among the intellectuals of the Solidarity movement.
With the power that Solidarity has now, they must begin what is a very difficult job addressing Poland's economy.
Well, that's going to be the biggest challenge to a Solidarity-led coalition government, is dealing with Poland's economy, which quite frankly is a mess, with food shortages and rising prices. And the Polish people are not going to be patient. They are going to expect answers, and quickly, from this new government.
I suppose it is fair to point out, Jim, that the communists will continue to have a considerable amount of power, and they will be meeting in emergency session on Saturday to discuss all of these new developments, which are unhappy ones to them.
The developments are unhappy to the Communist Party, and they will be meeting Saturday in an emergency session. They are in a minority government now, which is an unusual turn of events for them in this communist country, that the communists would be in the minority. But we must remember that Wałęsa has promised that the ministries of Interior and Defense, that's the police and the army, will remain in the hands of communists, which give them incredible power still in this country.
Jim Hickey in Warsaw, thank you very much, Jim. Turning to Latin America now, judges across Colombia are now on strike. They are demanding government protection from powerful drug lords. Those drug lords are blamed for killing more than 20 judges in the past 5 years, and that includes one just this past week. Health news, federal doctors now say the drug AZT delays the onset of AIDS in people who have the virus but show no symptoms and should be given to hundreds of thousands of new patients. AZT treatment can cost $10,000 a year per patient, but it is the only approved AIDS treatment so far. And economic news, the government is reporting inflation at the retail level continues to be moderate. The consumer price index rose a modest 0.2% in July for an annual rate of 5.5%. The state of Alabama executed death row inmate Herbert Lee Richardson overnight for planting a pipe bomb that killed an 11-year-old girl. The girl's aunt had broken off a relationship with Richardson. Military news, the Air Force successfully launched a military satellite during the night. At about 2 a.m., a Delta II rocket lit up the sky over Cape Canaveral, Florida, and there she goes. Its payload, a $65 million satellite, will help military navigators compute their positions. And that's the latest news right up to the moment. How's the weather? Let's check with Spencer. Spence?
Okay, Forrest, once again from atop Mount Washington overlooking Pittsburgh. I'm also overlooking the nation. And here's how it looks. It's going to be a stormy day and a rainy day in the eastern slopes of the Rockies. A lot of moisture there pushing eastward towards the western plains. It's going to be rainy, very, very rainy in the southeast and mid-Atlantic states. In fact, 3 to 5 inches of rainfall likely for some areas in Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. As that big rainmaker slowly pushes up along the coast, it'll spell trouble for the weekend for the northeast. It's going to be sunny over the Great Lakes, the extreme northeast, and the northern plains and upper Mississippi Valley today, and a nice sunny day along the west coast. High temperatures today will be generally in the 80s, rather seasonably warm. A little cooler in the northeastern corner of the nation, where highs will reach only into the 70s, 90s along the southern tier of states. Over the weekend, highs will remain in the mild to moderate range, 70s covering most of the northern tier of states, 80s through the nation's midsection, 90s squashed down south. And over the weekend, it's going to be a very, very wet one in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states, with soaking rains continuing there. Wet up and down the Mississippi Valley. Sunny just about everywhere else except a small area in eastern Arizona and western New Mexico that will see some showers. That's a look at the national weather picture, and here's a look at the weather where you are.
Hello, everybody. Clouds will grow over our mountains this afternoon, spilling into the valley after about 5 o'clock. That'll mean a chance of thunderstorms. Today's Tucson high, 99 degrees, Benson and Bisbee each at 88. Have a good Friday. Steve Schill, KGUN 9 Weather.
That's a look at the weather for now. Coming up, Pittsburgh Mayor Sophie Masloff. After this, from Yoplait Yogurt.
It is 38 minutes after the hour. Pittsburgh has several institutions. One of them, its mayor, the first woman mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, Sylvie Masloff. She took over really as mayor under very tragic circumstances, but to show you how beloved she is in this town, she's running for her own term, and she's running unopposed, right?
Yes.
Is that right? Now listen, before we get to the serious issues, I have a critical question about the spelling of the name of this town, and I have written a poem. I wrote this on Wednesday night. There is nothing that infuriates and curls the fur of a native red-blooded resident Pittsburgher than to mess up, mix up, be upside down, and misspell the name of his fair town. For you see, somewhere, somehow, someplace along the way, the town fathers gathered and decided they, for some reason I find completely demonic, would add in a letter, for no reason, phonic. So the city that should be Pittsburgh gets an H at the end, a catastrophe. Now, Vicksburg and Fitchburg and the Burg of St. Peter's don't need such a bonus put on by cheaters. Lynchburg, Hattiesburg pass up added letters, and their way is standard for all typesetters. Kansas and California are intelligent states, and they have Pittsburghs without extra consonants. So I'm left with the question, and I ask you, sir, why shouldn't this town be pronounced Pittsburgh, huh?
Well, I'll say first, Charlie, that as a poet, I think Shakespeare is spinning in his grave.
Why do they put that H on the end? I've never known.
That went back a long time ago, long before my time. But we like having it there, and it's going to stay.
And you're going to keep it?
Oh, indeed.
You took over, as I mentioned, under tragic circumstances with the death of the mayor, Mayor Caligiuri, who had rare disease, and it was so quick. But what do you do when something like that happens? How do you put it back together and bring people's confidence back?
Well, for one thing, it was a very tragic event, and Mayor Caligiuri was beloved in Pittsburgh, bordering on sainthood. We all loved him dearly. When I found that I had to do the job, I stepped in and did it, and we moved along without a hitch, and I think Pittsburgh is on the move and will continue to be on the move. I will never replace Mayor Caligiuri, of course, in the hearts of the people of Pittsburgh, but I'm working on it.
I mentioned you're very colorful, and I'll get back again to a serious question about you. You have wonderful malaprops. I don't know if they come out naturally, if you make them for rock groups. What are some of these groups who have come to Pittsburgh?
Well, of course, the fact is I am not of the rock group generation, and I do have some problems with rock groups. I never could get the Bruce Bedspring right.
Bruce Bedspring?
Constantly, and several others, and it certainly wasn't intentional. It was just that I couldn't keep them all
I understand you welcomed to Pittsburgh the Dreadful Dead?
Oh, yes, I called them the Dead Enders.
The Dead Enders, they're fans. That's right.
I never could remember.
And then, of course, the most famous group of all, the How.
The How. I kept saying I know how, but why? I couldn't remember whether they were why or how.
It is amazing to me. We were talking earlier on. I asked somebody last night the percentage of people who actually live in Pittsburgh, they were born here, very high. Over 50%, I gather, the people who actually live in the town were born here. Now, there was such a loss of jobs when heavy industry really got depressed in this town. But most of those people stayed.
Well, Pittsburgh, of course, is a city of neighborhoods. And the charm of Pittsburgh is its people. And people stay in Pittsburgh because it's a wonderful place to live. It's a great place to live. It's the most livable, the most affordable, and that's why people stay generation after generation.
Somebody said, and they actually loved Pittsburgh, said to me last night, it's a great place to live, but I wouldn't want to visit here.
That about sums it up. It's a great place to live. We've got everything here. Great amenities. We have great sports teams, great cultural centers, great medical centers, great universities. So everybody that comes here stays. It's just been a secret. People don't know about it. When they come here, they love it.
Well, one of the charms of Pittsburgh is its mayor. It's been a great pleasure to meet you. Thanks for coming down and joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Come back again.
And be so hospitable to us. Thank you very much. It is now 42 minutes after the hour, and Good Morning America will continue in just a moment. It is now 8:45. Well, we always tease Spencer that his career is on the decline. This morning we can say it with some assurance. He'll explain. Spencer?
Yeah, Charlie, I'm actually on the Duquesne Incline, but we are going downhill. And joining me is Claudia McNally, who has been the assistant manager of the incline here for the last 6 years. Is this thing completely safe?
Very safe. We have a safety cable, backup units for the electricity, and every safety device imaginable.
Especially for today, right?
Especially for today.
I understand there's a story about a ghost riding this line.
Yes, in the 1900s, the incline was 5 cents to ride. The people in Mount Washington decided they could afford the ride down, but they'd much rather, they'd afford the ride up, but they'd much rather walk down. So the incline owners hired someone to pose as a ghost. They hid in the bushes, they scared everyone, and they rode both ways.
That's a great way to boost business.
Sure is.
I understand this is also a great setting for romance here.
Oh, most definitely. Everybody rides the incline back and forth on their prom night, and then when they get engaged, they remember that romantic evening at their prom, and they come back and give their girlfriend their engagement ring on the car.
Didn't the line close down for a while back in 1962? I understand that it almost didn't reopen.
In 1962, it closed because it was a private-owned operation and they couldn't afford the repairs. The community got together, we raised the money, we reopened it in 6 months, and it has been running as a nonprofit organization ever since. We take no money whatsoever except from our fares and our donations, and we're very proud of that.
That's terrific. Now, I'm told that back in the late 1800s, the fare was as low as 2 cents to 5 cents a ride, and now it's up to 75 cents, which is not very much. That's not very inflationary.
No, we try to keep it as low as possible so that everyone can come and enjoy the incline.
Well, Claudia, thank you for joining us, and thanks for the ride. It feels safe. I'm having fun here. And by the way, I said that Claudia has been the assistant manager here for 6 years. Her husband has been with the line for 16 years, which means that they've really had their ups and downs. That's a different slant on things. Well, that's it for the Duquesne Incline. It made it down safely. Coming up in just a moment, the brother of artist and Pittsburgher Andy Warhol.
Was Andrew Warhol as he grew up here in Pittsburgh, but 2.5 years ago when he died at the age of 58, Andy Warhol certainly left a most impressive legacy behind him. And the older of his two brothers, Paul Warhol, is now continuing. Now take a look at this. This is not a Warhol you are looking at, it is a Warhola. Right, Paul?
That's right.
Hi, nice to have you with us. I have to make sure I call it a Warhola because it is a similar style, but it's not to be confused with your brother's work.
Yes.
Why have you chosen to do something so similar, though?
Well, I picked, a friend of mine had come over and he wanted to buy original Andy Warhol, and I told him it was out of the question. And I says, I have 10 of them, the older ones that he did in 44 to 49.
Yeah.
And that was, and there's no representation like in the art field with those. And they've run a show the last couple of months. It started out at NYU, at one of the galleries at the university. And then last month it shifted and they brought it here to Pittsburgh at Carnegie Museum.
And are your paintings there, or do you have some Andy Warhols hanging up in your house?
No, they're in London now, so they're having a show there with the same week at Modern Arts is having that one that they showed in New York.
I noticed that you choose Heinz. He chose Campbell's. Why'd you choose Heinz?
Well, his friend, naturally wanted to buy one of Andy's, and I says, it's out of the question. The closest you can come to an Andy Warhol if his brother does
a Warhola.
So,
now, you've been here in Pittsburgh. You've stayed in town. You've raised 7 children.
Yes.
But I guess you always had an artistic bent, but you never pursued it?
Yeah, it more or less runs in the family. Many of the children show, the art ability, but...
well, you have a son now who's an illustrator in New York, right?
James,
but he's a Warhola.
He's a Warhola.
Why did
James
Andy drop the A?
I think it was, I always thought it was easier to pronounce,
Warhol?
Yeah, Andy Warhol. Instead of, if you use the name Warhola, it's sort of dragged out,
Well, I know that you just did these Heinz because obviously Heinz here in Pittsburgh.
Heinz
but you're also going to do some farm scenes now,
yeah,
right?
I'm going to do things like, since I'm up at the farm and I have a lot of time and it's so relaxing.
And you're going to do chicken feet?
I'm going to do,
because Andy would approve of this.
I'm going to do
chicken
an
feet.
abstract, and I'm going to...
How are you going to do it?
I'm going to dip the chicken feet into a paint, and then I'm going to put them in on a clean canvas and
Let
just
him walk
let
around?
him walk around. And then I'm going to wash off the paint, and if he did well, I'll do it again, and I'll put red paint on. And
well,
so,
Andy did what with the movies? They were toe, remember the toe or the feet? The first movies? So this would be right in line.
And, you know, a lot of exotic movies, you know.
Well, it's nice for you to be able to pursue this now. And I knew Andy, your brother, and he was really quite a guy. And so
we miss him very much.
It's nice to have you help us remember him today.
Sure, I enjoyed coming down here. It brings back memories because Andy was born just about 2 miles away from here.
That's right, very close by. It's nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you, John. Sure.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
Okay, John.
Next week, Ali Sheedy will be with us, and Peter Falk.
Good Morning America is brought to you by rich, delicious, mountain-grown Folgers crystals.
And now Forrest Sawyer has a quick look at the stories making news this morning. Forrest?
Thank you, Joan. There are unconfirmed reports this morning that Polish President Wojciech Jaruzelski has asked a Solidarity newspaper editor, Tadeusz Mazowiecki, to become the new prime minister. According to Solidarity sources, Jaruzelski made the offer in a meeting today with Mazowiecki. Federal researchers now say AZT can delay the onset of AIDS in people who are infected but show no signs of the disease, and that the costly treatment should be given to people before they show any symptoms. The government reporting the consumer price index rose a modest 0.2% in July. That means so far this year, inflation is running at an annual rate of 5.5%. And in Cape Canaveral, Florida, a Delta II rocket roared into space overnight. The rocket successfully boosting a $65 million military navigational satellite into orbit. That's the latest news. For the latest weather, let's go back to Pittsburgh and check in with Spencer. Spence.
Okay, Forrest, once more, it's going to be a very, very rainy day in the mid-Atlantic states, and that rain is going to move right on up the coast for the weekend, meaning the Northeast is going to get drenched. It'll be a delightful day, though, this Friday over the Great Lakes, the New England area, upper Mississippi Valley, and portions of the northern plains, but heavy storms are pushing out of the eastern slopes of the Rockies and into the plains today. Meanwhile, the West Coast and most of the Pacific Northwest will see delightfully wonderful weather. And that's a quick look at the weather from Mount Washington in Pittsburgh. Joan and Charlie?
All right, Spencer, and down here on the banks of the Allegheny, there it is, the Gateway Liberty Bell, one of the many excursion Gateway Clipper boats here in Pittsburgh. We thank everyone here in Pittsburgh for really making it a pleasant stay, and everyone at WTAE, our affiliate here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, the folks at WTAE have given us the technical support, and it's been very kind. They've been very good and been very helpful, and felt full confidence as we went through the program.
Yes.
Next week, we hope you'll be with us. We'll be back in our old homestead. And among our guests next week, Ali Sheedy's going to be here talking about her new film, Heart of Dixie. Tennis star Andre Agassi's going to be here, the U.S. Open about to get underway. Author Bob Woodward on the controversial film about John Belushi. A lot of people said that movie should never have been made. He'll be here to talk about it. And for you nature lovers, we're going to have more bugs, turtles, and dolphins than you can shake a stick at.
All right, so we'll see you back in New York on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah. Hope your weather's good. Till then, we'll see you Monday.
There they are.
Hotel accommodations provided by the beautifully renovated Pittsburgh Hilton and Towers, home of good mornings, good meetings, and good memories. Air transportation provided by U.S. Air. The new U.S. Air offers 3,000 flights a day to 168 cities. U.S. Air, America's most frequent flyer.